name is Angela Chan and I work as a curator, researcher and artist focused on climate change issues. I run Worm Art and Ecology and I've been doing that since 2014, and as a creative climate change communicator, I collaborate widely with visual artists, activists, speculative fiction authors and youth groups. My postgraduate is in climate change and I research across decolonial climate justice, geography, feminist sciences and contemporary speculative fiction. So my artistic practice also explores decolonial climate storytelling through video recordings, remote sensing technologies and speculative fiction writing. So I'll be talking about an introduction to climate science fiction and speculative fiction, specifically focusing on Sinophone SF, which means it's Chinese language. And I want to kind of open up an intimate way of talking about climate cultures through translation, narratives, and future thinking from around the world. Well, firstly, I think about instability through its stages throughout time and timelines. So, for example, history leads to the present, which leads to the future. And I think with our creative future thinking, we need to be grounded in the realities of histories. So, in other words, our creative thinking can be aligned with justice and transformation that accounts for historical inequalities, which means that we prioritize the future for marginalized groups. So in all, artistic making and thinking can give us space to be critical of our everyday politics that are future thinking, as well as being critical of each other's strategies, so that we build up a more collaborative strategizing that's in line with activism. I think that science and speculative fiction has long dealt with environmental and climate realities, but actually we're in a completely different era of urgency now, and that's actually reflected in the science and speculative fiction literature at the moment. There's also a global understanding that is different, and there is a demand to destabilise the hegemony of who speaks for the climate futures of non-Anglophone, non-Western people. So, in other words, decolonial climate science fiction and speculative fiction forefronts the realities of instability that has been brought on by long colonial histories of slavery, extraction, exploitation, which actually remains as, mere speculative fantasies for many problematic stories that sit within the science fiction canon. In my research, I'm really interested in Sinophone/Chinese language science fiction that is actually translated into English, and how that brings together different areas of the world's stories about climate change to our maybe Eurocentric way of thinking about climate change. So this tackles the way that we read about headlines or news reports or quite biased politics. And we get to humanize these stories, actually understand the global movements of maybe consumption, pollution, that we are also complicit in, despite it being a faraway problem, so-called. And I research alongside some other people, co-founded the London Chinese Science Fiction Group, and we actually collaborate with different translators and authors. We meet up every month and have these discussions in a London or online situated format. I think that on top of the challenge of climate change, we also have the challenge within the arts, which is an over-academicization and over-aestheticization of the climate crisis. So what the arts and creative thinking can do is actually align and collaborate with activism much more heavily than supporting or sustaining a more elitist way of thinking, and actually forefront the people who are on the front lines of climate change at all times. I think that interdisciplinary thinking has been key to sharing ideas in more robust ways for quite a while now, But what we actually really need is more action and more strategy in communicating climate change to people who might not have already the resources to do so. And in widening this participation, we can reach a more equitable strategy and movement. We can also address the arts sector in the way that actually through the pandemic, more people and art workers are mobilising with unions to tackle instability within the art sector itself. I think that we need redistribution, and that means a redistribution of material resources as well as the ways that we think, such as knowledge access, education access, and power to actually act. We need to redistribute money, funding towards those who are doing the hard work and doing the work towards the frontline activities that are necessary.